The Batman was, in 3 words, goddamn excellent. Now, to avoid tripping over my plethora of praise-centric anecdotes, I decided to structure this film review into 6 separate parts. Part 1, story. Part 2, theme. Part 3, performance. Part 4, direction. Part 5, cinematography. And Part 6, score. The storytelling is slick and engrossing. Even though it's a 3-hour film, the pacing really worked for me. There was never a moment where I was confused as to what was going on or confused about motivations. Yeah, the film moved along excellently. The narrative was also impressively cohesive, and that's primarily in regards to the number of characters that this film has to juggle. I know in the past, when I've heard about certain comic book films that are coming out, and they announce, oh, there are 3 villains in this one, and immediately the vast majority of the population is saying, uh-oh, like, how is this movie going to juggle all of these villains? They're not going to be able to be fleshed out properly. The film is going to be a studio-meddled mess. But the genius thing that Reeves and company did here to avoid those issues was that the story came first. All of these characters, their motivations, the actions that they perform, they are all in service of the story. Yeah, the storytelling is just so fluid. The way all of these characters, Catwoman, Penguin, Riddler, Alfred, Batman, Falcone, the way that all of these characters are weaved into this pretty compact narrative through line. It's really wonderful storytelling. It was evident that the studio believed in Matt Reeves as well. There's not any sense of an exec trying to cram something in for the fans, for fan service that just feels janky and out of place from the movie. There's none of that going on. There's not a single iconic character in here, Riddler, Penguin, who is put into this movie for the sake of just having them be there so people can recognize them or to sell toys or something of that nature. There are concrete, fascinating themes in the film that the story very beautifully conveys, and each character is necessary to telling the story and instilling these various messages that the film delivers. There are 2 primary themes in this film. Number 1 is corruption, truth, lies, and their effect on society, and the other is vengeance. Let's start with vengeance, because vengeance is kind of a broad theme. You can have a horrific filmmaker utilize that theme and keep it very, very surface level and vague and not personal. But this movie really delves into the topic of vengeance and actually deconstructs it in a really interesting and unexpected way. Of course, Batman has always been associated with vengeance, but the really interesting thing that they do with this film is they show us the dangerous side of vengeance. They show that a motivation such as this can be driven by nobility. It can also be driven by morally askew, beyond belief, kind of psychotic motives. There's that excellent moment in the film when Batman jabs himself with an adrenaline shot before he beats the absolute ever-living out of one of Riddler's psychotic soldiers. And once this guy's mask is taken off and Gordon asks him, "Who are you?" and he replies, "I'm vengeance." The look on Batman's face is so brilliant. He is so unsettled to think that he and this psycho could kind of be fighting for the same thing, obviously in vastly different ways, but... And then that dark side of vengeance is also greatly displayed in the Catwoman story, and I think that Catwoman's exploration of vengeance is one of the components that really, really helps Batman to kind of alter his mindset when it comes to what he's doing and why he's being Batman. And we get that really great monologue at the end of the film when Batman kind of sums up his newly realized feelings on this concept of vengeance. That's not what he wants to fight for anymore. He mentions vengeance isn't going to change the past. It's only essentially going to corrupt you further. So instead, Batman wants to instill hope in the people of Gotham. He wants to help those who need it and remind them that not all of humanity is corrupt and beyond saving. Quite a lot of humanity is corrupt, but not everyone. There is still hope. And not that I would call this its own theme, but it is certainly something that I wanted to talk about. The color red. Now, a lot of the promotional material for the film, posters and such, really utilized the color red. And I always found that to be extremely cool visually. You know, it was very moody, kind of fitting to the character of Batman. What I didn't expect was for the color red to play a really interesting part in the film. Nearing the end of the film, Batman, plunges himself into the water of the flooded Madison Square Garden, or rather Gotham Square Garden, I should say. And he proceeds to set off this red flare that lights the room in this really beautiful way. Then he assists people in escaping from this fallen wreckage and debris, and he uses that red flare to kind of lead them to safety as we get this beautiful bird's eye view shot of Batman leading all these individuals in need. And something that I find so brilliant about that as well is that really kind of piercing dark red in real life oftentimes represents danger, or I think of stop signs and red lights and danger, keep out signs and fire. But this movie totally flips that on its head, and it uses this color red as a color of hope. And I think that kind of coincides with Batman's evolution of initially doing what he does to avenge his parents. Whereas now, instead of solely being Batman for them, he's being Batman for everyone. Now, alongside vengeance in the theme department is corruption, primarily in the government. This film reminds you that you can't simply blindly put your faith and trust in someone solely based off of their high-ranking official position. The film presents this idea that everyone, in one way or another, is wearing a mask. And it is kind of a more pleasant thought to believe that everyone in our government is prim and proper, and every single action that they perform is for the people and in service of the people. But that, of course, is a lie. And we see in the film that corruption can essentially spread like a disease and infect everyone from police officers to politicians to district attorneys. And of course, it may be simpler to give into this corruption as well, to kind of go along with the crowd, so to speak. But luckily, we have these beacons of hope in Batman and Gordon, who realize this corruption, do everything they can do to put an end to it, and ultimately rise above it to create a better Gotham City. The performances are absolutely brilliant across the board. Pattinson does a phenomenal job as both Bruce Wayne and Batman. He's wonderfully somber and brooding. I totally buy him as this character. I didn't feel at all like I was watching an actor, taking a stab at the character of Batman. He was, for those 3 hours, simply Bruce Wayne and Batman. I thought he did an excellent job. The Chris Nolan movies really showed how effective the Batman-Gordon partnership could be. And just as that partnership is a big highlight of the Nolan films, it is a massive highlight of this film as well. Jeffrey Wright is fantastic. He was actually probably one of my favorite components of this film. The look of the character, the delivery behind his lines, the passion for his job, and the passion for doing good. He was brilliant. Colin Farrell, holy shit. Talk about transformative. The whole time I was watching this guy, I was having an absolute blast. I also could not tell for the life of me that it was Colin Farrell. Obviously, I knew it was, but the look is vastly different from Farrell, and the voice as well. I thought the Penguin was very interestingly and perfectly implemented into the film. I'm a big fan of Danny DeVito in Batman Returns, but I love the fact that Colin Farrell, what he did with this character was just completely make it his own and different from anything we've seen on the big screen. Villain-wise, Penguin-wise, Paul Dano was fantastic. I totally bought him as this mentally disturbed, grounded serial killer. Everything about the Riddler really screamed realism, which made him that much scarier. He just felt like such a modern serial killer, and the way he utilized the internet to kind of fuel or help fuel the anger of what would become his followers. It really reminds you in this day and age just how some very scary people can acquire a platform and command an audience. He's menacing, he's creepy. Like the Penguin, he's beautifully implemented into the film. Zoe Kravitz does a beautiful job. I've been a big fan of big screen Catwoman portrayals. I was big on Michelle Pfeiffer, Anne Hathaway, and Zoe Kravitz certainly stays true to the character of Catwoman, but like so many others in this film, she really makes the character her own. This was the closest, out of the big screen pictures, in my opinion, this is the closest Catwoman's been to more so of a protagonist than an anti-hero or villain. You really root for Catwoman in this film. Her and Batman are a really great duo. I really dug their relationship. She's smart, she's brave, she's badass, she's sexy as all hell. She really has a clear motivation. She's not just there, to be hot and to fight. We get a lot of depth to her character. I am a massive Andy Serkis fan. I think he can essentially do anything performance-wise. He did a beautiful job in the film. John Turturro was fantastic. My favorite role of his since The Big Lebowski, for sure. So again, as I was mentioning before, when a comic book movie's announced, then it has all these villains. Well, essentially, the Batman has Penguin, Riddler, Falcone. There wasn't a single moment where I felt that there was too much going on or too many characters. Again, sorry to harp on this over and over, but the way the characters are weaved into the fabric of this story is so fluid. The direction is slick as hell. It is subtly stylized. It's moody. It's noir-esque. This is a singular version of Gotham that feels different than what we've gotten before. The production design is fantastic. I absolutely love the look of Wayne Manor. And when I say subtly stylized, I just kind of mean the film certainly has its own very striking noir-esque kind of look, but there is never a style over substance problem. The style blends in perfectly with the substance. Matt Reeves is really becoming one of my favorite directors in the business working today, for sure. The cinematography is beautiful. Like the direction it's stylized, it's exceptionally immersive. The cinematography, like the storytelling, is a massive, massive component that makes this film as effective for me as it is. We get all kinds of angles of different locations, such versatility in that regard that you are really immersed into Gotham. You really feel like you're a part of the scene. There are a couple POV shots, kind of like GoPro type shots from the perspective of like Catwoman's motorcycle helmet. There's another one when Batman leaps off this building and kind of glides through Gotham, where again it's kind of GoPro-esque, and again it just really, really immerses you in the scene, and it makes this film just so visually interesting. So much care and effort was evidently put into every individual shot of the film. The score, composed by the exceptional Michael Giacchino, is excellent. It's versatile, it's moody, it's eerie, and something that Giacchino does here with the main Batman theme that a lot of my favorite composers do is that he made this one theme so versatile in that it works in different ways in the film. There can be this huge, grand, epic orchestra performing the theme in one scene, but then in another scene, the theme is simply being played on a couple keys of a piano. And so now, instead of grand and epic, it's suspenseful and anticipatory, if that's a word, I'm not sure. I thought that Giacchino really made this score his own. He put his mark on it in an unfamiliar way, in that it's so different from the Batman films I've seen in the past. The utilization of the Nirvana tune in this film was fantastic. It was really kind of cool and unique to have a song with actual lyrics in a Batman film, rather than just simply the musical score. The Batman was brilliant. The storytelling was slick, cohesive, and fluid, and engrossing. The themes are clear and effective, and fascinatingly tackled and developed. The performances across the board are truly exceptional, and so different from what we've seen before in regards to portrayals of these characters. It actually really felt like all of these characters got their time to shine. There was no kind of superfluous characters. Everyone was there for a reason and felt needed. The direction is subtly stylized and moody and cool and beautiful and noir-esque. The cinematography is so indescribably immersive. It truly is a sight to behold. The score is excellent and versatile and fitting and badass. I'm so happy that I loved this film as much as I did, and I cannot wait to see it again.